Hi everyone, Steve Elliott here. This is a digital watercolour painting that I did in Artrage 5. I'm going to show you how to do this today. This is a condensed version of a live stream, so if you want to see the full 1.5 hour version and watch every brush stroke, I'll put a link to the live stream below. So let's get right into it. So we are in Artrage, and the first thing I want to say is I set my canvas size to 4096 pixels by 2896, and the reason for that is that's not too big, so that I can get a decent sized brush that still looks realistic on a decent sized canvas, which equates to an A3 size sheet of paper. And I also changed the texture size to 300% of the paper to get a bigger texture, with it being quite a large piece of paper. And this is the scene I'm going to do. It's from St Ives, and I'll begin by sketching, doing a quick sketch, not a lot of detail. I'm moving things about. I don't want to put in all of the detail in this photo. It's way too cluttered, so I just want 3 boats in it. I'm going to move them a little bit closer to the horizon, so I've got more foreground in there, and I've moved the horizon line down, you'll see, so I've got more sky. So the secret of doing a digital watercolor in Artrage, or in any app really, I think is the use of layers. If you follow me, or if you've been following my channel and you've been looking at the oil paintings I do, you'll know I pretty much spend most of the time working on one layer. When I'm doing watercolors, it's a very different ball game, and I'm creating lots of different layers, because watercolor is a translucent medium. So whatever color you put down, you will see what's ever underneath it. It will glow through. So you've got to do that with the digital painting just the same. So you need to be creating layers. So you'll see as I progress through this painting, I'm going to be using lots of layers, as opposed to when I'm doing oil paintings, when I pretty much stay on one layer. So I'm cracking on with this drawing. I've done just 3 boats. I'm really happy with the composition. I used the soft pencil brush for this, by the way. I set the colour to a mid-grey. Black was just way too harsh, and I set the pencil size to 5%. That gave me a really nice sketch. So I'm going to create a new layer, which I've done, and I'm going to start painting the sky in. And I generally type in the colour size, the brush size. I'm using the delicate on dry brush, and I use that for the old painting really. And I set the brush size to 300%, so I can cover a large area very quickly. If I was doing a proper watercolour with watercolour paints, I'd be using a 2-inch decorator's brush that I would use to gloss a door or something like that. And I've created, you'll notice there, I put the first layer on. I use the delicate on dry brush to get the colours on, and they flow together quite nicely. I put another layer on and add a darker colour, and I'm using the harsh chaos blender, and that's the secret to get that sort of soft edge look that looks like watercolour. So this is nothing like painting. You get other apps like Rebel, which is like painting in watercolour, where acrylic paint is the same. The paint actually flows out on the canvas. It just doesn't do that here. You have to improvise and come up with ways of making the paint flow. So I use the secret to the painting is 2 brushes. Well, so we've got 3 secrets now, haven't we? We've got the layers, creating layers, using this delicate on dry brush and the harsh chaos brush to soften off the edges and get that nice sort of watercolour effect as though the paint's run into the wet paper. So that's pretty much all done in one layer of colour, apart from the second layer I've got on the sky, and I use the eraser to lift out colour because I want some highlights on the boats, so I can put other colour on, and on that little lighthouse as well. So that's where we're at now. I've got a nice sort of distant ground in there. The sky is looking okay, but it's a bit too purple, but I'll worry about that in a bit. Now here's what I'm doing now. I've made the brush a lot smaller, still using that delicate brush again, and if you'll notice, when I'm painting in the walls, I leave a little white edge along the top, the light sort of catching the top of the stonework, and that's a nice effect in watercolour. It always works well. I'd done all the painting at that point without zooming in once, so a bit crazy really. And I like to drop colours in. You'll see I'll get a colour on and then change the colour and drop a little bit of blue in there. I do that with proper watercolours as well, and with this delicate on dry brush, it does work really nice. The colours do kind of flow together and blend well to get that nice effect. I'm just sort of conscious that I want to get some reflections in the water. What I intend to do is on the photo, the tide is in and the boats are sitting in water. And what I want to do is have a sandy beach that's sort of stuck on the beach. You'll see there I wasn't liking the sky, so I went back to I switched the top layer off. I went back to the first layer and rubbed it all out and put a softer colour on, and then turn the top layer back on again to get rid of that horrible purple. And you know, you might be saying, oh, you can only do that in digital, you couldn't do that in real watercolour. Yes, you can, because I've done it hundreds of times. I've done demo, I used to teach watercolour painting for quite a few years at a community college, a night class to adults, and quite often I would take a picture like that and take it to the sink, and to the dismay of the students, I would wash off of the painting and then carry on with the demo if I wasn't happy with it. And the point there, what I was trying to get across to, never be afraid to recognize that it's not going how you want, and you can step back and recover from it. So it looked quite drastic at the time, but it only took a few minutes to do, and to me it's made a massive difference because it's got away from that sort of, it looked very false and almost digital, the colour. It was too pure, and now I'm much happier with it. So I continue, you see the layers are building up now, but I'm still on that sort of bottom layer, adding the colour to the boats. And then I've created a new layer, look, and I'm painting on top. So I'm strengthening the colours, softening them in, using that harsh chaos brush. Remember, I'm only using 2 brushes throughout all of this painting. I use the eraser there just to lift out a little bit of a wave of the sort of foam coming in, and then I'm going to sort of put the sand underneath that, so you can see I've moved the tide right back, and I can sort of bring the sand, or the beach, that's the word I was looking for, the beach, forward a little bit. And now I've strengthened up the distant land. So obviously once I've done that, that's sort of screaming out, and now the rest of the painting needs to be strengthened up and add some darker shadows in it, otherwise that's just going to look really, really odd. So I'm changing the only thing I do with a brush is change the size of it. I don't add water or switch off any of the functions or anything. I just change the size of that brush throughout, and it's the same with the Arch Chaos. I don't change anything, it's just the size that I'm changing. And then I was painting these in, and somebody suggested in the live stream that I hold the control key down to get a straight line for the masts. And I said, well, I've tried that before with the oil paint and it looks absolutely dreadful, but I'll give it a go and see what it looks like. And I was amazed because, as you can see there, it looked really natural. So what would have been quite time consuming otherwise, it became really easy. And I just used that Harsh Chaos, I can't say that, I keep getting mixed up, Harsh Chaos brush or blender, just to sort of soften off those masks a little bit. And then I dropped a little bit of sort of blues and reds into the mask with the colour, just to change it up a bit so they looked as though they'd been painted in. And I don't think you would tell that they've been put in using holding the control key and drawing a line. They look really, really natural. So yeah, I'd learnt something there. I've always avoided using the straight line tool when I'm trying to produce a realistic medium, or sort of make it look as though it's a traditional painting. I suppose you could use a straight edge and run your brush along the straight edge like you was doing coach lining or something like that to get a straight edge, but my trick was always to use the a flat chisel flat square end sable brush, and just use the flat edge to just touch the edge of the paper. So I'm coming to the end of the painting now. I'm just putting in the foreground. You notice I've added some really strong colours. Well, they're not really strong, but they're a lot stronger than the distant colours, just to bring that into the foreground. I've used the eraser to lift out some white under the boats. I'm using that Harsh Chaos brush again to blend away. I've done a little line of sort of sand there, just taking your eye up towards the boats and softening all that off, just to finish off the composition of the painting. I get it signed, and there we have it, a nice little watercolour painted in Artrage 5. And there we are. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, a big thumbs up as always is much appreciated. If you're new to the channel and you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, because I have lots of videos like this and I would love to be sharing them with you. So hopefully I will see you all in the next one. Bye.